Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are around the world. We're absolutely thrilled to be joined by a very large
Nice.
number of colleagues today for the RSA's conference First Time Presenters webinar. And you're really very warmly welcome. My name's Alan Kinder. I'm the Chief Executive of the Regional Studies Association. And many of you, I'm going to guess, are here potentially because your first conference presentation may be coming up very soon if you're attending the RSA's annual conference. Some of you may be here with other conferences in mind, be it RSA ones or otherwise. But this is a really wonderful innovation by the events team here at the RSA, broadly connected to some survey work that we did at last year's annual conference when we talked about how we could enhance the experience for everybody. And I very much hope today's webinar will help anyone who's got a first-time conference presentation coming up soon. So you're warmly welcome. If you don't know too much about the RSA, very briefly, I'll just explain that we are both a global organisation and an interdisciplinary one. We're a network for urban and regional research, development and policy. I'm sure many of you knew that already. And we support our members. The RSA is a registered charity and a membership association. We support members with the latest research, funding schemes, networking and publishing opportunities, and spaces to grow research and careers, and not least, of course, through presenting at conferences. In terms of the inevitable housekeeping, if you'll bear with me just for a moment on that, this webinar is being recorded. It will be made available subsequently on the RSA website, but if you don't wish to appear in the recording, you could just keep your camera off at all times. And once we've heard from our presenters today, there is a chance to ask questions. Again, you have an option. You're warmly welcomed to turn on your camera and ask your question in person, but you don't have to do that. You can put questions in the chat if you prefer to do that. And if you're on the socials, we encourage you, of course, to use hashtags, hashtag RSA25, which denotes our annual conference coming up in Porto, or hashtag RSA webinar, or both if you're feeling generous. Okay, on to the session then. If you're presenting at an academic conference for the first time in the near future, well done, you've joined us for what I know is going to be an engaging webinar, tips for first-time academic conference presenters. You're going to gain essential insights to help you shine on stage, it says in my notes. That could be crafting a compelling presentation. It could be handling Q&A sessions with confidence. Whatever it is, you're going to get practical advice that's tailored to early career academics and to students. And we recognise, I suppose we feel it ourselves, don't we, that presenting at conference is to some extent about managing your nerves, harnessing your energy, connecting with your audience, and leaving a positive, lasting impression on your peers. So on to our speakers then. Firstly, just to say that we wish Bronnie Goodwin-Hawkins well. Bronnie came down feeling unwell today, which is a great shame. So she's not able to join us. But I'm delighted to say that Dr. Alex Holmes has joined us, has stepped into the breach. Many of you will know of Alex. She is our membership communications and IT manager here at the Regional Studies Association. But some of you may not have known that prior to joining the RSA, Alex was a teacher and a teacher educator, and she has spoken regularly at science and international education conferences, and we're extremely proud of the fact that Alex was awarded her PhD in physics education back in 2015. So Alex, looking forward to what you have to say. Our second speaker is Grete Gansauer from the University of Wyoming in the USA. Grete's an economic geographer and an interdisciplinary public policy researcher with a focus on regional development and place-based policy. and the local state in peripheral regions and left behind places. Grete has an interest in rural community development, which sprouted, I'm told here, while leading NGO programs and convening collaborative governance forums on environmental issues in Western Montana, timber and mining communities. Today, Grete's research interests are mainly around focusing on rural areas and natural resource production. She has fellowships and visiting appointments with the US Department of Agriculture, National Academy of Sciences. I'm turning over the page, Grete, there's so much of it here, in Washington, DC and the University of Cambridge. And she does collaborate as well, both in the US, the UK and Finland. Grete is also, I'm delighted to say, a board member of the RSA, and she co-organises EdgeNet, which is an RSA global research network on peripheral regions and why they matter. And I know, again, Grete will have a great deal of wisdom and practical sense to share with us. So that's broadly it from me. Just a quick reminder, if you have questions, put them in the chat box with a Q in front. And later on, there will be a chance, as I said, to ask questions out loud as well. But without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Alex Holmes for the first presentation.
Thank you very much, Alan. And hello, everybody. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I have stood in at fairly short notice, so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to share some tips with you today that will make your experience at the conference, at any conference, a little bit easier and a little bit, I suppose, more comforting, especially as if you've joined today, you can see the number of people who are actually, you know, in the same boat as you. So hopefully there'll be something new. If not, well, you know, put it down to experience and you might get some questions in later, and you obviously get to see some of us who will be at the conference, and possibly some other new members as well. So what am I doing today? I'm going to really give you a few tips for first-time presentation. And I suppose my background has been that I have given many talks, many lectures, many keynotes in a slightly different field over the course of my history. However, in my current job as communications manager, I get to go around conferences with a camera and a video camera and a phone. And that allows me as communications manager to see all different kinds of presentation methods, presentations themselves. And I've learned quite a few tips, I suppose, over the years I've been roaming the RSA conferences. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, first of all, I'm going to very briefly look at kind of crafting a presentation. And I discovered whilst doing this today that actually it's really hard to do a presentation on presentation skills, and then you have to follow your own rules. So I've tried to do my best in the kind of short time I've got, and hopefully you may or may not learn something from it. I've got a few tips for engaging with your audience. Now, obviously, we're online today, so the audience is slightly different. I can't see whether you are paying attention or whether you're doing something completely different. But when you are in person, you can very much engage with your audience. And I think that's one of the points I'm going to try and make quite heavily. And then how to manage the Q&As, which I'm only slightly worried about at the end of this, but hopefully I will be able to kind of get through the Q&As with Grete and Alan together. So my first slide, because obviously I think I need to start and practice what I'm about to preach, is that I don't think Oliver would mind actually. So I caught Oliver with his very first slide at the last conference, and he started with a painting. And then we were in Florence and the painting was also in Florence. And I'd like to say that Oliver talks about global value chains, okay? And there's a painting. And somehow Oliver used this picture, a very famous picture of a copper mine, as his starting point for his presentation. And it was one of the best starters I just happened to be in on that I have seen in any RSA conference. So I'm using it as my first example. So I suppose that's what the kind of the message of this is that start with a really strong opening, hook your audience. whatever your topic is, and I know that the regional studies field is very broad, but hook them with a question, hook them with a picture, hook them with a surprising fact, hook them. Get your audience on your side. You only have a very short time, yep, and you want them to actually be paying attention. So ask yourself before you start writing your presentation, why should they even care? Why do they care? Why are they here? What are they looking for? And then answer that question with your presentation. And hopefully my subsequent slides will kind of cover the point of why you should care about watching this. The next one is obviously clarity and structure. And there are, I'm sure that everybody knows how to give a presentation, but a very short presentation within a conference means that actually you're really limited in what you get to say. I've actually got quite an extended period of time today, and I'm quite lucky, but you are really limited in terms of how much you can pack in and then get some constructive feedback from your audience and some good questions. So your introduction and background lays the scene along with your strong opening. And what we'd like to see is, I suppose, is a really brief methodology, because methodology questions can be discussed in other times, in other places. What people are there for, are they there to see why your research, why your project, why your work actually matters? What have you found out? That is what they want to know. They don't really need to know the nuances of how you got there, and those questions will come up in later discussions if what you've talked about has interested them enough. So really, behind your PowerPoint, you've got another question. Why does this matter to them? Why does it matter to you? What's so important about it? And go from there. So now we have, why should they care? And why does it matter? And what have you found out? Okay, so that's the second bit. So we have a structure, but that structure is hanging a kind of story, if you like, of your work onto this presentation, where you are going to tell people, disseminate what you're working on or what you've worked on. Now, my next slide, I've tried to be really careful with, and I have seen it. I am just laying that there. You can look, I have tried to kind of anonymize it a little bit by getting rid of all the headers, but I have seen it. And I've seen it in various forms as equations that are 11 point and they fill the PowerPoint slide. I've seen it as tables with tables and tables. I've seen 4 or 5 graphs. It's an absolute no-no. Because no matter how much you stare at that data, you didn't generate that data. You haven't given enough methodology to your audience, because remember, we're keeping that bit short, so they don't need to see it. Yeah, it won't mean anything to them. Pull it out, make an infographic, put some pictures on that make it very clear what you're saying. This, an absolute no-no. So simple visual support. A PowerPoint slide is a support thing. It's to support you. Yeah, it's not to replace you, because otherwise there's no point in being a speaker. Keep it simple. One idea per slide. Use images, use graphs, use photographs, use paintings. Keep your fonts huge. The bigger the font, the clearer things will be, the less words. And then I suppose the no unnecessary flair comes with my comms hat on and my IT hat on, is that the more animations and kind of flourishes you put into your PowerPoint, the more potential problems you are going to encounter if the computer's a little slow, if it's not got the same version of PowerPoint, all these kind of things. So keep it nice and simple. So you're supported by your slides, not replaced by your slides. You obviously need to clearly communicate. And again, regional studies crosses an immense number of different subject boundaries and immense amounts of technical language. You know, in my heart, I'm a physicist. I would love to do technical language to you, but I fear it wouldn't go down well. So we avoid jargon, we avoid complex ideas. Define something by all means, and then simplify it. If it's a really kind of complicated thing, you know, you can define it, but then use a metaphor, use an analogy to simplify it so that your whole audience, many of which will not have English as their first language, can understand what it is you're trying to get across. Because remember, why does it matter? What have you found out? Those are the questions behind you at all points. So the communication bit is what you're trying to do. And then there's no point, this is really hard at this point with this slide, but you need to check for understanding. Now, I've only actually got 3 faces on my screen, so I don't know whether people are going, what is she saying? I don't understand. I am asleep. I am trying to write my essay for tomorrow. I've got a deadline. I don't know. Beauty of the online screen. However, in person, you can see them. Are they paying attention to you? Are they on their phones? If they're on their phones, by the way, they may be on social media saying amazing things about you. You give them the benefit of the doubt. If you can see Candy Crush, however, it's a no-no. Ask them, hey, do you understand? Are you interested? So engage with your audience, not just your slides. Don't talk to the slides. The slides are supporting you. They are your backbone. They are your foundation. They are not you. Talk to your audience. Pay attention to them. Are they going, what? What is going on? Yeah. Are they going, oh my God, I'm going to die of boredom? Are they nodding with enthusiasm? Pick up on it. Be flexible. If they're all going, slow it down. Change your wording. Redefine it. Ask them, did I make that clear? People do answer questions, you know. They will go, no. That, you know, brave people will go, no, I didn't actually understand it. Yeah. Try again. So if you see confusion, act flexibly. Practice. With a timer, practice at least 3 times, not looking through your slides in your head. Practice standing up with the slides behind you, maybe a little tiny laptop in front of you. Yeah, practice. Keeping to time. Give yourself a couple of minutes. Sometimes PowerPoint doesn't load. Sometimes there's an issue. Sometimes somebody falls out their chair. Sometimes things happen. Give yourself a bit of a buffer. Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you'll get. You do not want to see the red card of doom that says stop, and you haven't even got beyond your methodology. Yeah, it's again a no, because you're just like, you haven't got to the point. Get to the point fast. And then we're getting close to the end of what I'm going to say today. This is an audience. Now, first time conference attendees, don't worry too much about this. This was a plenary. You know, I was scared for them because the questions that came out of this, we were trembling. I think the speakers were actually trembling as well. But you need to anticipate your questions, the questions that come out. You can't get them all right. You can't answer or have a list of answers already, but you can be prepared. Be prepared for common questions. The methodology question comes back up again, limitations, future work. There's lots of kind of options for, you know, the same kind of questions that you might get from a supervisor, really. If somebody asks you a question and you think you've got it, but you're not quite sure whether you've got it or not, maybe repeat it, rephrase it, ask, is this what you're asking? Yeah. Don't answer the question that you think it was, because that's not answering the question, is it? You answer the question that was asked. You can take a breath. Your brain, and my brain certainly, is extremely bad at questions. I'm just kind of giving myself a little bit of a get out clause at this point. Take a breath, think about what has been asked, process it, answer. And be honest, we're all human. You know, even the eminent professors, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We don't know everything. And actually, the beauty of being a physicist is that the more you know, the more you know you don't know. You know, so actually, be honest. I don't know, but we can bring it up in discussion later. Park people, you know, oh, that sounds really interesting. Maybe I could talk to you after the session. Yeah, put them in a parking lot. But be honest with people. People know. And you know as well that if you try and kind of blag your way out of it, by kind of giving an answer that isn't really a politician's answer, we'd call it. Yeah, people know you're not fooling anyone, least of all yourself. Oops. So ultimately, when you write your presentation and you get prepared to do your session at the conference, ask yourself what 3 things you want them to walk out, that you want them to remember who you are, you want them to remember what you've talked about. Yeah, narrow it down to 3 things. They're not going to remember the whole thing. If you've got 20 slides, they are not remembering 20 slides. In barely, you want them to remember your name, but you would really like them to remember you for being clear and concise, for having clarity of thought and clarity of speech, so that what you're trying to put forward is understood. Keep to time. Do not be that person, because I remember, yeah, and I'm just the person that walks around with the camera. I remember the red cards coming out and people going, but I haven't got there yet. We remember that bit. Don't be that person. And engage with your audience. Your audience like you. Make your audience be interested in what you're talking about. Then they'll want to come and talk to you about it later. And then more ideas will come out from those kind of little networks that you generate at conferences. So those are my 3 takeaways. And on that note, I'd like to thank you for listening.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much. I can see some real hands clapping together, possibly 1 or 2 virtual ones too. So, wonderful start to the webinar. And Alex covered there, crafting a presentation, clarity, structure, using slides as support, checking for understanding, practicing, and finishing on time. And Alex practiced what she preached there by finishing on time. So well done on that front as well. Okay, now Grete, I won't go back through the bio if that's okay. I think people have got a strong sense of your expertise, and I know they're about to get a very strong sense of your practical thinking and the clarity of your thought as well as your wisdom. So I'll turn over to you if that's okay, and then once we've heard from Grete, I can see some questions already coming, but I think I'll leave it until the end, and then we'll do a Q&A all together. Is that okay, Grete?
Sounds good.
Okay, over to you.
Great. Hello, everyone. Good morning from me here in the States. And as Alex said, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hopefully not good night. Let me share my screen and I have also a few slides, although I'll warn you, I broke some of Alex's very good rules for slides. They're a little bit texty, but I am meaning for the slides themselves to also be a resource on a recorded version of this. So forgive me that they'll have some information to share. So hi, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I am, as Alan mentioned, the student representative on the RSA board. And during that time, I have been lucky enough to advance through my career remarkably. So most of my tips that I'm sharing with you today are geared towards student and early career researchers who might be attending the RSA conferences or attending academic conferences and building community. This is an image of me chatting with Fiona Hill, who's like one of my academic heroes. And so that will just get us kicked off, which is to remember that conferences are all about building community and building your connections. And RSA, I have found to be just a wonderful and incredibly supportive academic community. I think especially for those thinking about and planning to attend RSA 25 in Porto in just a couple weeks. I'll be there. Please say hello if you'll be there too. This conference, I think, just to give it a bit of a shout out, has just a wonderful, really supportive, very welcoming culture. So please join us for that, take advantage of it, but also think about how you can contribute to it. So I think something that's helped me in attending conferences, especially as a student. An RSA conference, RSA Winter in London, was my very first academic conference as a PhD student, and helped me build a foundation which has mattered tremendously in my career, in my professional connections, but also just in feeling connected among a community of peers and scholars who care about the same things that I do. So in coming to a conference, I would encourage you to think about how you can contribute to your professional community, and remembering that as students and ECRs, you absolutely have valuable contributions to make, not only intellectually, but also interpersonally, and just in the spirit that you bring, and in your uniqueness that you can offer, but also how your professional community can support you outside of your university, and what values you might be able to ask of your community, and a conference might help you build. So this relates to one of my tips that I'll share, which is planning for your conference and thinking about the goals you would like to walk away from that conference with. So I have a few tips, my 3 takeaways, and then I have a bonus tip at the end, which might become more relevant, especially as you attend some more conferences, maybe outside of your first one. But first, I'll talk about planning for your conference. So I think to really make the most of attending a conference at all, I think a little bit of planning goes a long way. So in relation to the question, especially of what can your academic community and professional community do for you, I think thinking ahead of time about setting goals for the conference, what would make the conference feel like a success, that might be concerned with your presentation, maybe feeling like you give a strong presentation in your Q&A, but conferences are also so much more than just the 10 or 15 minutes you have to present. They're an opportunity to network and meet people, connect with people who are researching your same topics, who might have real valuable insights to share. So there are a number of goals concerning both kind of the hard skills and the soft skills side of research that might concern making your conference a success. Do review the conference program beforehand, identify the sessions you want to go to, make yourself a plan. RSA has a convenient app that makes this easy to do, and you can plan your conference out and build yourself a schedule. And I am a card-carrying extrovert, but even I need breaks from socializing. So especially if you're introverted, make sure to plan yourself breaks in, don't skip a session. It's okay. There's going to be a lot of interesting information to share, but I think I have this a little later, but there's like an adage that, well, maybe, I don't know if I have the catchy version in my mind, but it's something along the lines of the most valuable takeaways in networking happens outside the sessions. It happens when you linger afterwards, in coffee breaks, in happy hours. So make sure you plan yourself breaks so you can be recharged and ready to engage in your full capacity. Be organized ahead of time. This is a tip I need just as much as anyone else. Make sure your supplies, if you have business cards, I guess those might be a little bit passé these days, but a way to easily exchange contact info when you're on the go and running between sessions. Get yourself oriented with a conference venue map. It cannot, sometimes when I'm looking at where my session is located in a new university, in a new country, in room 101-5, that means nothing to me. So get yourself oriented beforehand, and make sure that your contact info is on your slides, definitely at the beginning and end, and social media info too, because people do tweet out, and I guess it's not tweeting anymore, post to X or whatever, out as you're talking. So make sure you give the people a vehicle to do that and recognize you. And make sure follow up with the connections you make afterward. taking a quick thank you email and quick nice to meet you, even being kind of unapologetic about linking some of your own work. If you have even a blog published or anything like that, I think people really appreciate that, and following up on those little threads. Okay, that was kind of some practical stuff. My remaining tips are kind of more from my personal experience in observing the culture around especially RSA conferences. And yeah, so this is maybe a little bit more like reading between the lines. So my second tip is to just embrace, if this is for students, but also I guess in general, it might be just to for all to embrace humility and embrace a learner mindset. We're all academics. We all value learning. Conferences are an opportunity to do that. They're not only an opportunity to kind of trot out the dog and pony show of your finest and best and most finished, polished work. But they're also an opportunity to gain feedback from world-leading experts who are in the room for your sessions, who care about the same topics that you do, which is something that's not often offered to us within our universities. And even if it is, this is, you know, a group of people who are convened around a topic who specifically aren't only at your institution. So something I've noticed at RSA conferences especially is people are presenting works in progress, and they're very open about that. And I think that's really healthy. So remember that the Q&A session especially is an opportunity to gain feedback as you're working towards maybe developing a full paper. So rarely, I mean, sometimes, of course, you're presenting on material that's already published and you're still, you know, this is obviously a key opportunity to disseminate that information and share it among communities of practice, which are important. But even in those cases, even if the material is published, there's of course going to be opportunities in your next research directions to build on that. So I would say, yeah, just, and remember that this is an opportunity to gain feedback. I see a lot of folks bring notebooks up to the podium to take notes during the Q&A session. That helps me stay engaged with the questions that are being asked, but then also take that feedback home and take that to heart. And then something I've also done is just kind of creating the culture of an open conversation by inviting constructive feedback as I'm giving my presentation and saying, I'm still working out the theoretical angle on this, or maybe something with the methodology, or we have these results and we're working on how to interpret them. I think that type of stance is very welcomed in conferences in general, but especially I've observed at RSA. And then you can also contribute to this supportive and constructive feedback culture as an audience member. So you're going to spend more time in the audience than you will presenting. But just thinking again about the contributions you make to your professional and academic community, think of contributing to that through providing constructive feedback, and not, you know, I have been in conference settings where people ask kind of those like cutting questions that are meant to tear you down, but think of the Q&A sessions as an opportunity to build others up and to invite constructive dialogue around really interesting and cutting edge research. I'd also say for students and early career researchers in the audience, don't be afraid to ask senior academics questions. This is a way that you can contribute. Students are often more on top of the cutting edge literature and engrossed in it than the busiest senior academics. So don't be afraid to pipe up, ask a question, or grab them after the session and introduce yourself. Okay, this is a really texty slide, so sorry, we're gonna go through it. So I would say think about using the conference to strategically build your academic community. And this is really about networking, which is a term that I bristle at because it feels too transactional when really there are very genuine and fulfilling aspects to building community around subjects you care about. So I think about networking at conferences in kind of both horizontal and vertical senses. So I'll define what those are and then talk about kind of how I approach those differently. So in a horizontal network, these are your peer-to-peer networks or networks, groups around your affinity or specific topic areas. So for me, I'm a Left Behind Places researcher, so I'm really interested in meeting other people who are working on Left Behind Places, hopefully other authors that I've read that have been published in the area. Also, the RSA Women's Network, I think, is another great example of this. There are also student networking opportunities, student and ECR networking opportunities. So thinking about how you might use the conference to kind of meet other people horizontally, so to speak, who are working within your topic areas or who you might be able to relate with over a certain issue or identity. And then the vertical side of your network might be kind of senior academics whose feedback you might find valuable. They could be people who might be able to offer you a postdoc position. There are places where you might like a job. I mean, this is our career. I think it's okay to name these things and be transparent about, these are opportunities to build connections with people who might help you build your CV or find the next step in your career. Or maybe you might be brought into a project that they already have going. So this is kind of maybe a little bit more on the strategic side, but these relationships are still valuable and don't have to only be transactional. And a lot of these types of opportunities, your next job opportunity, an opportunity to build your CV, come from having a strong foundation of relationships. So for building your horizontal network among your peers, why? This is your support system. They provide you solidarity and great opportunities to collaborate. I've had some fun grassroots opportunities to organize different networking opportunities that have come from working with other students. So you might do this and think about identifying and then connecting with kind of those horizontal networks by seeking existing events and opportunities around the conference. So these could be happy hours or special sessions geared towards students. Maybe the RSA Women's Network. I should know this. Okay, Women's Network will have events surrounding the conference. As well as just other topic areas. And this might also be just finding people who are on your similar topics through special sessions and through organized sessions, which collate similarly themed papers together. So, and then in thinking about building your vertical network, I think it's clear to see why you might want to do that. But how requires a bit of planning beforehand. So if you think of people who in your vertical network, they are probably important. They're probably busy. There are probably a lot of demands on their time. They may not know who you are yet. So I think it's something that has worked well for me is to identify who I want to connect with beforehand. So this is looking in the conference program. Maybe I'm looking for those key prominent authors to see if they're presenting. And I reach out with a simple email before and plan a coffee. Just plan, maybe you can grab their ear for a 15-minute coffee break. But if you plan that ahead of time and they're looking for you and they expect to see you, that might be a more successful way to gain this person's time, also respecting their time, than just trying to catch them when everyone else at the conference is already trying to catch them. Well, I mean, not that they're that famous. This is academia after all. And we're all working in little niches within the broad Regional Studies Association. But I think you get what I mean in so far as just planning ahead, identifying who's going to be there and who you'd really like to connect with, and don't be afraid to plan that. I think people expect it and respect it. And yeah, just a final note that these are not only transactional relationships, especially within the RSA community. I've found senior academics have been very warm, willing to talk to me. I've even invited them to my sessions where I'm speaking. Sometimes they've attended, but they've provided me like outstanding feedback afterwards, which has really helped bring my thinking along. So that could be another idea as well. And then I have a bonus tip. This might not be quite so relevant at your first academic conference, but especially as you start to build some community. I'm calling it create the social infrastructure you wish to see in the world, which is to not be afraid to do a little bit of community organizing. People want opportunities to socialize and connect, and especially busy academics have limited capacity to plan. And so community organizing, I think, is a service which is really, really appreciated and valued. And it also, I mean, this is kind of like between the lines, it also kind of puts you in a power position. So even if you're a student, even if you're just, well, not even if you're a student, but just in general, if you're the person who's texting a few, or emailing a few of your connections and organizing a happy hour or a dinner, or even just like sitting together at a conference lunch. First of all, you avoid, if you take the initiative to do that, you avoid sitting alone at conference lunch, which first of all, you should never do. You should totally just be like empowered to pull up a chair and sit next to anyone and have a chat, because everyone's welcome to do that. And you're saving the other person from eating their lunch alone. So you're doing a community service that way. But you can foster a sense of belonging just even in like a simple, hey, let's, do you want to meet at conference lunch on Thursday and have a chat? Or even if it doesn't have a motive, but just providing people a sense of belonging and opportunity to connect. I have done this with EdgeNet. Alan mentioned I'm along with Bryony, who couldn't join us today, an organizer of EdgeNet, and we've started organizing just informal happy hours alongside the RSA conferences. We care about peripheral regions, so we invite other people who care about those topics. And as you can see, we've started to get a pretty good turnout. And even when we don't, even if we only had a few people, it would still be a great opportunity to kind of find some of those horizontal networking connections amidst a conference, which can feel pretty big. Actually, I think the RSA conferences are very nicely sized, but even so, it's nice to be able to connect with people who are working on your topics and where you can really like talk shop and get into the weeds. And I think that's where the real generative power of the academic community bears fruit. So I think that's all I have for you today. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And again, if you're at RSA Porto, please feel free to say hi. Would love to meet you. Love to meet you all. So thanks.
Grete, it's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, both to Alex and Grete. Exactly what was billed, insightful, inspiring, and I think has just set the stage very nicely. Now we can see already we got some applause. I'm fully expecting, especially given the nature of this session today, that some people will have questions. Very much picking up from what Alex and Grete have said, fully encourage people to use the hand up symbol if you wish to ask the question yourself, which you can do. And while you're just gathering your questions and gathering yourself to do that, I'm looking on screen. Meanwhile, down the sidebar, if you're looking at the chat or have been, we can see that there have been some questions already. One or two have been answered. So thank you to Lisa, who's in the background there. She's answered Diana's question, which was around if you have 2 hours and 6 papers, how long do you have to deliver the presentation? So Diana, I hope that answered that one. And I can see another question from Tommaso, which is around the Young Scholars Academy. And again, thanks to the link that's been inserted there. Tommaso, if you have any further questions, just ask. Okay, now we have some questions in the chat, which I am preparing myself to read out to our presenters. I'm also looking to see if the hands up symbol goes up. And Lisa and Alex, perhaps you can help me if I miss any of that. Okay, so let's start with the written questions. Right, so we have a question from Charden. Hi, I'm a student. I've not presented before, but I will be doing so next week. So good luck, Charden. I submitted the abstract before analysing the data, and now I feel things have changed. How do I present this, or how does one present that? There's a challenging question straight away. So you best use your tactics for just gathering your thoughts, Alex and Grete, or indeed anyone else might want to put an answer in the chat. So there's our first question.
I'd be happy to jump in. Good luck to you. I'm sure you're going to do great. I think, honestly, short answer, don't worry about it. People totally expect this. I am going to be doing the same thing. When I submitted my abstract, I think they were due in December, February, with extended deadlines. For the RSA conference, and then I'll be presenting next week. And I think it's very much the norm. People expect and anticipate that academic work evolves. And if you're on track, it should, between the time you submitted your abstract and the time you're presenting at, in summer conference season. So I would say, you could acknowledge that and say this work has developed since I submitted this abstract. Remember, that's not a weakness. That's a good thing. And so just present the latest data that you have that you feel comfortable speaking on and talking about. And I think that you will find a friendly audience who's accommodating of that, and probably your fellow presenters will be in the same boat.
Grete, thank you. Alex, did you want to add anything to that answer?
No, I would totally agree with Grete that actually it's very rare for somebody's abstract 4 months prior to be identical to their presentation, and one would actually probably be quite worried about it if it was. Actually, that I won't say that, because there will be some people who haven't got that far yet, but yeah, it can change. Remember, your audience are human and the speakers are human, and we're ultimately all academics. So developing ideas is actually why you're at the conference.
Yeah, thank you both. And thanks for the question. Grete.
Yeah, I had another thought on that, which is actually something that I've learned. So this is a flip. So this is like for next time, which is thinking about how you write your abstract. Vague. In my conference abstract submissions and my titles that I give my presentation, I've learned to make them slightly more vague over time, to allow myself a little bit more room in what I'm actually presenting at the conference, because there is several months in between the time that you're submitting your abstract to when you're actually presenting.
Thank you. So Sandy has asked a really clever question that might end up putting me on the spot in a moment or two. Sandy, did you want to ask it yourself? Do put your hand up if you prefer to do that. If not, I'll read it out. Can't see a hand going up. So I'll read it. So excellent session. Question for Alex. There might be all of us caught up in this. When chairing sessions, if we notice a presenter doesn't quite answer an attendee's question correctly, could be due to nerves, and assuming that as chairs we've made a note of the question correctly, should we rephrase the question to the presenter or ask the attendee if their question was correctly answered? Are cue cards when presenting acceptable as a subsidiary? But let's tackle that chairing one, if either of you have a view on that.
Yes, I think so. I think that there are two different things going on there. If a presenter struggles to comprehend the answer because they are nervous for whatever reason, because either the question is not worded well, it does happen, or they're very nervous and can't really process what's being asked of them, help them out as a chair. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Help them rephrase the question, push it back to the questioner, get the questioner to rephrase it until everybody understands the question. Because sometimes there are questions that can be asked that literally nobody can answer, and they just bad questions. So as a chair, help the presenter. I don't think you can ask the attendee I just don't think about that correct answering thing, because I think that if somebody's questioning about somebody else's research, there is not really a correct answer, but there would be an answer to the question, if you see what I mean. There's two slightly different things. But yes, as chair, help out certainly if they're students and you can see that you can tell, and they need a little bit of backup, then help them out by trying to simplify questions so that everybody can kind of process them. Does that answer the question?
Well, we'll find out if I say anything else at the moment. Grete, would you like to contribute at all to that question, that discussion?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I also think sometimes as chair, you're like generally think about how you can support the speakers, which includes keeping the session running on time. I don't know, the only other thing that comes to mind is when you get the inevitable more of a comment than a question, which actually I think can totally be constructive. However, you can also get like the rambling person who's taking up a lot of time, and sometimes you have to do the uncomfortable thing as chair of saying, thank you very much for your contribution. We have to move on, and you just kind of like have to keep things going along. But it's in service of supporting the speaker and making sure that the session can be fair and everything that it needs to be. So
thank you. And Sandy, as chair of this session, I kind of stick to the sense of, look, people probably have different perspectives on things and different ways of talking about ideas and concepts. But I think you do, when you're in a room, have a sense of whether there has been a valuable exchange, whether there has been a dialogue or actually the point has been entirely missed. And I don't think I need to intervene more as chair here, because both of our speakers there got the point of the question and they conveyed something, I hope, valuable back. And of course, if this was live, I might turn to you, Sandy, and say something like, does that make good sense, or would you like to continue the dialogue later on with one of our speakers, or however it might go. I can sense already that we're a good problem to have. We may not get through all of our questions. I'm going to apologize in advance if we don't quite manage it. But okay, this is Stefan. If I only have 15 minutes for the presentation and say 10 minutes for a Q&A, should I invite questions during my presentation to encourage engagement, or should I leave it all to the Q&A session at the end? And Alex, you talked about engaging, and Grete touched on that too. So Alex, did you want to just say something about that, your view on this?
Yeah, okay. So inserting questions into the midst of your PowerPoint, your presentation, is actually quite a good idea. However, you have to, and the chair will help you, you have to monitor those replies, because as we have heard, the rambling answer is eating into your next slide or your next item on your agenda. So by all means, insert questions, but limit the time that you're going to get for answers. Otherwise, you will run out of time. If you do it that way, then you need to obviously think, well, I've got 15 minutes for my presentation, plus I've got 5 minutes for my questions, and I'm putting the questions in there. Therefore, I've actually got 18 minutes to get everything done with my buffer time. And so you're managing your time slightly differently, and you're putting your questions within, but don't expect to have that question time at the end as well. So it's how you play it, really. But it's controlling those answers. So it's also asking the right kind of question that doesn't encourage rambling answers.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and I can see that our time is ticking down rapidly, so I'm going to have perhaps a chance just for one more question. It's a very straightforward and a quick one. This is from Stacey, who's not an academic researcher, but a project manager and evaluator, who says, I'm basically planning on presenting a case study Do you think that would be okay? That's an interesting question in a regional studies context, isn't it? So, Grete, did you want to answer that one from your perspective?
Sure. Yes, please. I think most of the research that's presented is case study. Well, maybe not most. I don't know. I don't want to put a number on it, but there is ample case study research that is presented at RSA conferences. I think it's core to the like methodological remit of the discipline. Yeah. So especially case studies can take different forms. I'm especially thinking of geographically, if you will, regional case studies, which are, all over RSA. I think that's very much within, the ethos of the discipline with how regional studies scholars are thinking about things. So it would fit in very well with this conference.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm mindful of the advice you've both given about timing and not overrunning. So I think in terms of questions, look, if you have questions that you feel remain unanswered, firstly, you're always very welcome to get in touch. We also have, as is being put in the chat, a chance to meet RSA staff very soon in a separate webinar, and of course to meet everybody at the upcoming annual conference. Hopefully you're registered to attend there and you may well be presenting there. So we can continue the conversation. And the question, by the way, about case studies, there is a spotlight session in Porto at the annual conference, essentially meet the editors of each of our journals. So that question could well be posed there and get some very interesting answers around the position of case studies within regional studies research, just to build on what Grete has said. Okay, well, look, thanks again to everybody for attending from right around the world. Thank you to our wonderful speakers who have indeed provided insights and have inspired us. I'm particularly pleased, by the way, at the notes that were sounded in those presentations about getting excited and looking forward to delivering your first academic conference presentation. There is a balance to be struck, isn't there, between the nerves and the adrenaline. It's the adrenaline that sort of pumps us through. And thanks also, Grete, to pointing out that the RSA absolutely values early career researchers and students, an integral part of the community, and our conferences, a very important part of the lifeblood of that community building that goes on. And as a relative newcomer myself still to the RSA, probably worth reminding everybody what's been said by both our presenters. When you get to present at an RSA conference, I think you'll find an audience that absolutely wants you to succeed, will listen respectfully but critically to what you have to say, and will provide you with feedback that's well worth receiving. So good luck, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon.